Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first ever video episode of TFT Study Hall with myself, Frodan.
And I'm Dishsoap. Hi.
And we're live in London.
Yeah.
Actually, Dishsoap's right across the room, so I can't talk too loud. Otherwise, my sound's going to pick up on your mic. Dishsoap, how you doing? It's your first time across the pond, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much first time like living in the US. I went to Canada a couple times. It's kind of fake. I don't know. Feels like not that different, to be honest, but maybe it's just because everyone's speaking English here. The Fnatic headquarters is like really, really nice. Really cool to like practice TFT here every day. So,
all right. Well, not only are we boot camping right now for EWC, but we're also learning a lot about the new set, Magic and Mayhem for Teamfight Tactics, and what a set launch it was. There's a lot of things to talk about, so let's just go ahead and dive into the meta to begin things off here of our meta analysis. So at the very top of S tier, by now, at the time of this recording, we've kind of figured out that Syndra is the best 2-cost in the game. In fact, probably the best unit in the game entirely. And there's so many different variations that people are playing of Syndra. First off, do you agree that Syndra is the best just straight up comp and unit to play around? And two, what's your favorite variation of her if so?
I can probably agree that she's like the best comp. She just does so much damage for a 2-cost and basically has infinite scaling. As for my favorite version, I'm not sure. I feel like it just depends. I like the version where you fit in through mage a lot because you get like a lot of utility. You get to fit in stuff like Chrono and stuff. But the easy like shapeshifter version to play is very good too. And then like the Wukong version, like apparently is like secretly broken as well.
Yeah, what Dishsoap is referring to is there is a version of the comp in China that plays Wukong 3 as your front line, and then you play support traits like Preservers to help keep that Wukong and give you a bunch of mana as well. So it's a really interesting take, but I think it all boils down to one thing, which is Syndra just needs really good front line. It doesn't really matter how you get it. As long as you just have something that can stall long enough for her to kill everything, you're going to be able to get the job done.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting anyone else to play this, but I played a game of like Honey Mancy Arcana Syndra. It actually fits like not even that badly. I went first with it, but yeah, I had like golden ticket pretty much through everything. I don't think it's actually that good, but just goes to show that you can play with almost anything.
In terms of Syndra itemization, we start off with like a Shojin Nash and then throwing AP, but we see a lot of people actually itemizing it a little bit different. No longer are we playing things like Jewel Gauntlet and Death Cat. We're just going for like another mana or attack speed item. So everyone says like +1, right? Shojin Nash is plus an extra item. Do you have a favorite out of all those?
I think the best possible after Shojin Nashers is Red Buff. Just because it gives you the attack speed you kind of want with like some little extra like damage amp and the anti-heal for free. So you don't have to get it elsewhere. But just like any attack speed in that slot works really well. So like even like another Nashers, a Rage Blade, even like Shiv is not even that terrible. Morello gives some attack speed. You just want like attack speed. For like a couple reasons. One is like it helps like proc Incanter faster. Incanter does actually proc on like auto attacks. And then also getting her to attack faster is the best way to like build up her cast counter. And then she scales off how many casts she does. So over the course of the game, it's going to add up to a lot.
Yeah. Even if you have like extra tiers, I've seen people go like blue buff Shojin, Nashers on her.
Double mana is not even that bad.
Yeah, exactly. And how fast you stack actually matters as well. So then there's currently a little bit of a debate. When is the latest you're willing to play Syndra? Because some people say it's so good. Can you actually like one trick this comp 20 out of 20? Are you willing to play like, no Syndras until 3-2 and roll down to level 6 for her? Or do you need it earlier in your book?
I think it's definitely possible to like roll down on 3-2 for it, but it's not going to be like a super high average play.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're kind of at the mercy of like hitting Syndra 2 plus upgraded frontline all off your 3-2 roll down, which is a little risky. But the comp is that powerful that it definitely can work, and I have seen it work.
My take on it is that you can probably do that, but you do need like the items ready to go. If you just have like a single Shojin, that might not even be enough. You kind of have to have like a Shojin Nashers or some kind of combo to help ramp her to make up for that lost time. Because the later it takes for you to get that 30 to 60 is when you start to really feel that the power of it, because you get an extra rift and deal that huge amount of burst. In my opinion, I feel like you really need to have that ready to go. So I've tried a couple of times. It's a little bit risky, but I think part of the reason why it was working for me is because we were a little bit earlier on the train since we were boot camping and trading this tech. I'm not sure if I'd get away with it right now in the current environment of the meta. Let's talk a little bit about the other big part of the meta that people are talking about, which is Karma, the other big AP carry. Karma is the 4-cost dominating the meta, and it's not just Karma by herself, it's Karma plus a duo carry. Karma Fiora is really common, but there's also variations of Karma that play other units. Maybe you throw in like Nami and mages, or maybe you splash in Karma the other way. Like Karma's now making her way onto Syndra boards and other things. So what about Karma is so strong, and how should we be playing her?
The big part of her is that she comes with like a pretty good support trade in Chrono. Just getting like the team heals like pretty nice. And then also the unit herself has like a little bit of like utility in her spell, as in like when the units with her dot die, they get healed for a percentage of their max HP, which is pretty nice, just keeping your frontline alive. So it's like she's like a carry with a lot of utility. It's the reason she's like fitting on a lot of in-game boards. I don't actually think like Karma herself is like extremely broken or anything. Like she's doing infinite damage. I just think she like fits on a lot of boards and has a lot of very good utility. So she just ends up seeing a lot of play.
Okay, so then why is my full carry A tier comp losing to a Karma 1 board than Dishsoap if Karma is not all that business?
Well, I mean, the person's frontline you winning against is like probably correct, and then doesn't really have to be Karma 2. She's just like staying alive, proccing Morello, slowly whittling everything down, and then healing back up with like the Preserver frontline or whatever.
Yes, and I think that's the important point to touch upon. If you remember previous sets where there was comps like Enchanters or Invokers, or what was the comp in set 7 that played Graves with the Tempest?
Like Seraphine Graves.
Yeah, the Seraphine Graves composition. Oh man, basically it creates like a stall out comp where you try to win through attrition by healing and shielding. This feels similar to that with the Preservers in the sense that if you can't get to that Karma fast enough, you just that front line can basically go infinite. You get Rakan 2, you get Nasus 2. They just get so hard to deal with. And Karma 1 just has the inevitability over their opponents. And I think that's where a lot of people run into problems. And I think that's where other 4-costs are really struggling, because people want to flex into Ryze. They want to play Gwen, and they just can't kill these frontline tanks anywhere near fast enough.
Yeah, Ryze is like the main person that can't do anything about it. It's kind of sad.
Let's talk about some of the other comps as well. We got Kassadin multi-strikers. This was a comp that actually popped up the very last day of PB, just not in time for Riot to nerf it. In fact, they were aware of it going into it, but they're just like, we can't get it in time for the A patch. So what is it about this comp that makes it so strong? And also, why is it starting to fall a little bit out of the meta? Not necessarily out of it, but necessarily not being as dominant as it was on the first few days of the meta.
It's mainly just like Kassadin being super, super strong. The way he works, he like has like a bunch of ramp up damage, and he like gives them a big shield, gives off a big shield. So a lot of times you'll see him going infinite with healing. And as like the meta develops and people like are building towards a lot more damage, especially with like burst comps like Kog'Maw and the Cinder, like we talked about earlier, it's just harder for him to go infinite in those matchups. If he ever like has to like walk to the enemy team and has like downtime and gets bursted down, he's just gonna like lose pretty badly. So it's just like, I guess he's getting a little worse because people are just making better boards, I guess.
Yeah, I think people are making better boards. People are catching on to the fact that we talked about that front line, right? You get that Nasus 2 that's really hard to kill, and people are positioning a little bit better. I feel like these melee comps, due to their just raw power of a bunch of stats, they can really punish people for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now people are labbing out like what's the actual optimal way to fight against some of these units. Plus, I do feel like a lot of melee players historically have been pretty lazy. They're like, I'm just going to always put it, one row back from the side, or maybe just front center. And I think people aren't really considering that. And that makes them really vulnerable to things like Syndra, right? If Syndra ramps up and Syndra's targeting that Kassadin really early, that Kassadin is going to get bursted down. I also want to add one other thing. I think people on the other side of it are not being careful about Akali. I think Akali jumps to the back line. She's a valuable 3-star in the late game because she might catch that Karma, especially if you're playing Karma 1, right? You're trying to hide behind it. She gets there, she snipes the back line. So how do I position around Akali just so how do I keep my carry alive?
Okay, honestly, I don't know. But I think like not having like a solo front line in the middle is like a big part of it. If Akali could ever like get into the enemy like front row, it's probably a lot easier for her to get into the back line. So if you can just keep her on like her own front row, she's gonna have to dash at least twice to get to your carry.
Okay.
So it's like a big part of it. Also, she's just not gonna get to your carry if you're on the opposite side. So it's like a very
true
dodge it.
Yeah, nothing like some long distance to separate yourself and clear your head. So that there's a couple of tips there. Also, the thing about this reroll comp, in my opinion, is that it caps really high if you can get to Camille 2, get that 7 multi-striker online. And there's a couple of other interesting things that people are trying out. People are trying out some pyro variations as well, trying to get like a bunch of attack speed that way. So definitely a lot of things to consider when you're playing multi-strikers. The third of the big reroll comps is Kog'Maw and all the variations of Kog'Maw. I wrote in our newsletter for our meta read that the thing about Kog'Maw is that he doesn't have the raw power necessarily of Syndra, but he has so much versatility because there's so many approaches to Kog'Maw. You have just a straight up Kog'Maw Jinx, like Hunters. You could go for Tristana Kog'Maw, which is now becoming the more popular variant because of how fast it is and consistent. There's also like the hero augments that can play with Kog'Maw, which is really, really nice as well. And then there's a couple of other like unusual things you could do, like Honey Mancy 2 tanky. So Kog'Maw just has a bunch of different setups. Do you have a favorite one that you like?
It's not necessarily a favorite one. It's just the one I like default to the most often is just the Tristana one. Mostly just because it's like you said, it's like the fastest thing to get to. And like if you're rolling really, really deep on 6, it basically caps out on 7. So you can kind of end your game on level 7. Your level 8's like not that important, so you just can reroll for like literally everything. I definitely think like that's not like the strongest version. The strongest version is probably like some hero augment and
like Sweet Tooth Nunu.
Yeah, Sweet Tooth Nunu, or like you said, like that 2 health, like 2 tanky setup, and there's also
2 healthy works, by the way, as well.
Yeah,
it's another good augment. There's a
yeah.
lot of good augments for Kog'Maw in particular. Yeah. You forgot some of the most important part of Kog'Maw is that the level 7 board is just perfect synergies, and it feels very satisfying. Which, incidentally, by the way, if you play an augment called Trait Tracker, this is actually a really common setup to use because you get 7 units on 7, perfect synergy, very satisfying way to cash out. And you also have the board to potentially set up into a Sugarcraft, for example, if you end up hitting that and setting up for it. So very powerful, very fun comp.
I don't know if this is like an unpopular opinion, but I actually like don't even like perfect synergies that much. Because like,
wait, what?
Unless it's like level 9 perfect synergies, like it's not even that satisfying because like you just go level 8 and then like it's like what do you even do? You know, you're just like
come on. It looks so nice. It's very tidy. 7 traits. And you're like so tempted to click Stand United.
Yeah, but then I'm just like thinking about like the future. Like, oh god, I can't get another synergy.
Oh, you don't want to mess with it. Oh,
like isn't the main like dopamine of leveling up like getting in another trait?
I guess so. So you're thinking about like the future. Like you know that you can't stop on 7, and you have to level. And so you're just thinking about like what I actually play on level 8 and 9. I see.
Yeah, that's why it's not satisfying to me.
Yeah, all right. So we covered some of the other things like the hero augments like Nunu, and that also applies to Zap Attack for Blitzcrank. That's partially what makes him really, really good. We also have Callista here, but I'm kind of ready to demote Callista from the S tier personally, but I do know that it does pretty well because it's like such an expensive comp. That's the thing about Callista that's really interesting is that there's a survivorship bias element of it, because if you can get to Callista with the 4 and 5 costs, I mean, I'm looking at the core setup on the data sites. It's like 4 costs and 4 5 costs and like a bard. So it's crazy how expensive this comp can be, or Nikali rather. So talk to me a little about Callista from your perspective.
I don't know. Like, I'm sure she's gonna be like very, very strong. Like after like the first or second patch of the set, she just has like a lot of things going for her. As in, like she can fit really, really well into the late game trait webs, and she comes like with the fairy trait. She gets an item for free, so I have to build 2 items for her. So all of that's just gonna make her like a good carry to play. But currently, right now, I just think she like is just not better than the overtuned real stuff that exists most of the time, unless you're like just abusing 2-star 5 costs. And is it really like that much of a Callista comp at that point? I don't know. But yeah, if you try to like play Callista from like loose streak, low roll, or like low roll loose streak into like a big level 8 roll down, it's not going to go that well for you most of the time.
Yeah, I only seen this succeed if you are on like a crazy tempo win streak. Let's say you're playing, Epoch or Spoils of War, that kind of thing, where you're like tempoing so far ahead, you're win streaking a lot, you're pushing your advantage, and then you're able to only slight roll on 8, be very stable, get to 9, and that's the point where I see Callista's like really dominate, and you can feel the power of that composition. But if you're like loose streaking, you're behind, this is not the comp to play from. If you're like kind of, because if you don't hit that like solid 4 cost front line, or even the Callista 2, you're going to really struggle, and those real comps are going to steamroll you, and all that HP you bled out, it's just too late at that point. So that wraps up most of our S tier. Shout out to Build Different. Build Different is also a really powerful augment, but it's very situational. I haven't even gotten a chance to play it yet in my games. Have you got a chance to play Build Different yet?
I played it a couple times. I think it's like really, really strong. Yeah, like the notable thing about this set that's very different from previous sets, BD, is that you actually kind of do want to play around the AP units to set.
Yeah.
Usually the AP units last set like cared a lot about their synergies, but this set it's not really the case. Like Rise loses Scholar and Portal, like who really cares? Nami loses Eldritch, which is like a team synergy, and like 3 Mage, which actually like lowers her AP. It doesn't lower her damage, but it lowers her AP. So like she's playable for sure. She also provides some good CC. And then Karma, like we talked about, she already had like very good team utility. That doesn't go away when you take away the traits. You just lose like Chrono and some extra AP. But she still provides like the ability to spread Morello and heal your team.
Yeah, the funniest thing that you mentioned that I like is Nami. When you play mages, you're actually doing less damage for the double cast to compensate to make it more balanced. But hey, that's great. And the build different gives you like a lot of impact. I've seen people play multiple Namis. They go for 2 Namis on each corner to just like AoE the board.
Yeah.
Very satisfying, very powerful. Really cool. It's just, we usually say build different is an AD composition. You have a bunch of physical damage, multiply it through attack speed, just hitting a lot. It's very simple math. But now with AP being in the mix, that's a really cool variation of build different. At the very top of A tier, we have Sugarcraft. Why isn't Sugarcraft S tier? At least, do you think it's S tier in your book? Because I think some people are saying like they just can't get the ball rolling with it right now. Feels like the meta's too fast. Where do you think Sugarcraft actually lands?
On average, I'd say like A tier's fine to put it. I don't think it's like on average going to be S. Simply due to the fact that you do really need to be like ahead and stabilize, because later on into the game you're kind of like biding your time waiting for the rewards to come in to like actually spike your board and compete in the late game. So you're gonna need that buffer early. You're also gonna need like the items to stabilize around Jinx as well, so it's a little bit item gated too. And also item gated in a way that like you're not gonna get the rewards unless you have like extra items from like augments or like a particular portal or something. So that's definitely a part of it as well.
Yeah. If you have a spatula start off the portal, if you have flexible, right? These are some of the things you can think about Sugarcraft, or obviously a Sugarcraft crown or something like that. Start things off. I would say that on average, they'll be very careful. And especially with the prevalence of Kog'Maw, if they end up just pulling Jinxes out of the pool, that just gives you one less out for you to play for with Sugarcraft, because Jinx 3 is ultimately one of the core strategies of a Sugarcraft cash out. But if you can get there, if you can get to the 2,000 cake, I mean, I have yet to see it really lose. Had you actually even seen 6 Sugarcraft lose at full power before?
No, I haven't. But honestly, like it's very often that the game ends like you win before you even cash out if you're playing it from a good enough spot.
True. Yeah. All right, let's talk about some of the other hero augments. This one's fun because I already know the answer to this. Galio's hero augment, Deja Vu. So talk to me about this one. They're bringing back a favorite dragon. People love Deja back in set 7 Dragonlands. I personally think this augment's awesome. It's my favorite hero augment. What do you think about it?
Oh, it's definitely like fun and cool. Like I have no problems with like the thematics and like the feel of the augment, but I just don't think it's very good. I know like the data like disagrees with me on this, but in my personal experience is that if you're going against somewhat optimized boards, the Galio simply just doesn't do enough damage to keep up, and you really need to like hit that 3-star, hit like the Civic, double Ginsu, Gunblade Biss. It kind of feels to me like Bard last set definitely has similar itemization, but it feels similar in the way that like it's super strong like early in the meta, but once people start like optimizing their damage, it gets a little sus.
Do we have to change our itemization then a little bit? You're saying Gunblade is a third item, but that's not a damage item. That's like a sustain. What about like Jewel Gauntlet, because you're ramping up so much AP with the attack speed?
Yeah, I mean maybe. I think I looked at this like a couple days ago, so maybe the data's changed, but it did still like the double rage by Gunblade.
Okay. I believe it.
Because like you do want to keep your frontline alive specifically.
That is true. I like the 6 Vanguard variation. Some people are trying out other variants like Portal Mages. I don't think that's nearly as effective. Just letting that Galio rack up the attack speed seems to be the most effective way for that Galio.
Agree. Is Mage like a debuff on him or no?
I don't know personally, because I can't tell if Galio actually wants like even Mage in general.
Yeah.
So the jury is out on that one, because I feel like when I play like a 6 Vanguard, that feels like it does better than 4 Vanguard 3 Mage at times. But I can't tell if that's because I'm like stalling for frontline. I've only played it once since it launched, so I can't really say for sure.
Well, I definitely think 6 Vanguard's the play. It's just like It just feels weird that like he's a mage and it doesn't seem like you want to play him. I was wondering if it was like a downgrade because I believe I forgot what set it was, but there was definitely a carry where like mage was legit a downside on someone. I like
Lilia,
yeah.
where she was a cavalier and she would like do the bonk. She's actually supposed to replicate that, by the way, this set through her hero augment. Kind of like turning back the clock to set 7, but it is awful. That's actually I wasn't even planning to talk about it today because it's so bad.
That one just sucks. It is what it is.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the final hero augment we have in A tier. Elise's hero augment, Spider Queen. Do you like this augment? Some people are pretty mixed on it as well.
I haven't taken it, but I think the I don't know if we change this, but I think the itemization is like a little unintuitive. Like people are actually just kind of building her like more tanky with like stuff like Warmogs and like just like full tank on her and just having her stall and like kill everyone slowly with a poison. So that's like kind of interesting. I actually haven't gotten a chance to play it, so I can't really speak on the validity of that. But
well, I had a chance to play its Dishsoap, and you happened to be in that game. I actually giga high rolled that game because I actually got I got at least 3 pretty quickly within like 40 gold left on my roll down, and then I got a spatula offered as a charm. I just happened to have a floating belt that I really didn't need because I already had 3 items on Elise, and so I cruised, and then on 8 I just natural the Briar on my like 4-2 turn. It was just kind of crazy. So that was a situation where I snowballed and I played 7 Eldritch, and then I eventually 2-started very quickly because it was Champion Conference, so you guaranteed the Briar, and I think that was like one way where like Elise can succeed because it does feel like you want to push levels. You're not trying to like I feel people are like, oh, I have to roll for like Jace 3 and Shyvana 3 and like all these other cheaper unitary shapeshifters. And I feel like, yeah, you could do it that way. But ultimately, with these 1-cost hero augments, you want to secure that top 4 placements because you inevitably get capped out unless you're playing like a crazy Kog'Maw Blitzcrank thing. So that's the only time I've played it. I've only played it one time. It happened to be a first, but I mean, that was a crazy Stars Align game.
Yeah, definitely should check it out.
Okay, so we have Fast 9 that actually just fell out of A tier. I think just because Fast 9 is just not very viable right now. But if you do end up playing Fast 9, Arcana ends up being like the choice around this like low A, high B tier stuff. Have you been able to Fast 9 at all this set?
Yeah, a couple games. I mean, I feel like calling it unviable is a little. I mean, I guess it's just the way you frame it. Because I definitely like. The level 9 5-cost boards are very, very strong. And if you do get to them, you are going to be in a good spot. But it's more of the fact, it's more of a test to like the difficulty of getting there in a patch like this. Especially when people are like trying to like reroll and be strong on like stage 3, early stage 4. Those are usually the rounds you're going to try to win for free when you're trying to go Fast 9. So like that's kind of the problem. But I don't know. I feel like if you can teleport to these 5-cost boards, they are not that bad.
I mean, I agree. I mean, they should be, right? They're 5-cost are the best units in the game, but I feel hesitant to even recommend people try it because right now I feel like people get punished so hard, especially if they're in like a high tempo lobby.
Yeah.
And level 9, let's remind you guys, and we're going to talk about this as our main topic for today, which is charms. But getting to level 9 isn't just enough. You actually need to also think about how much gold you need to roll for charms. And I think that's going to be a big X factor, whether or not your level 9 board can really cross that distance that needs to make up for all the HP you traded. Let's talk about Varus, either in the Shapeshifters or the Pyroblasters. We had so much hope for this guy at the very start of the set. What ended up happening?
Oh, I mean, it's just like a +1 pyro check. The balancing on it, it's just off. The difference between 4 and 5 pyro, in my opinion, shouldn't be like as huge as it is, because it gives you like a huge amount of attack speed and like 6% more execute, which is just like a crazy swing just for having an emblem. And then the emblem also just buffs your smolder. So I think like Pyro Emblem Varus is still extremely viable. It's just that like I don't really want to touch him without it, which is definitely a miss on their part, I think.
Yeah, and also Blashes themselves don't feel that great. They did like a pretty sizable Ezreal buff, which scared a couple of people who were like, "Oh no, like I swear by it, like Ezreal Blasters is like pretty good, or like Portal Ezreal is pretty good." But neither Hui or Ezreal feel really strong. Is Blaster trait itself just bad?
I don't think it's the trait. I think it's just the units. Specifically Hui. I think like Hui like could get like a really big buff and it would be fine. And Ezreal, I don't know. The thing is, Ezreal has does a lot of DPS, just pure damage. But the thing is, it's not focus fire, so it's like the least value DPS. Like if you put an Ezreal 2 on with like 3 items on a portal board versus even like a Rise 2 and like give them both like quote unquote BIS, I'm pretty confident saying like even without Blaster, the Ezreal 2 will damage the Rise. But like a lot of that damage is just straight up fake. You're just like hitting like the backline, which it's like hard to finish off. And you don't really have like the focus fire that actually matters in winning fights.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Ezreal has potential, and there could be a situation where later on in the set, people are going to roll their eyes when Ezreal 3 wipes their entire backline in one shot. But that's not this patch. There's going to be a lot of work for that to actually happen. But I will say that I do think Portal itself might be underrated. Actually, it's okay. Let me rephrase. I think Portal is heavily overrated by people who are like starting the set and casually playing. They're like, oh my God, Portal's so good. Take the Portal +1. It's just very easy. 6-8 Portal and 10 Portal's so busted. But at high elo, there's kind of like a smear campaign. Be like, oh, Portal sucks, or like this vertical entry is like is so weak relative to the other comps that you can play. Because so many times people are like, oh, they hit like the Portal board and they just lose to a Karma 1, or they lose to like a Syndra 2, and they're like, oh, they just can't compete. But I think personally that Portal is a little bit underrated. What are spots where you're willing to play these Portal lines, Dishsoap?
The strength of Portal is all in the stage 3. And even stage 2. It has one of the strongest early mid games out of like any like not reroll comp. Just getting like the extra like effects from the Portal and all the units are pretty solid as well. So the way you're gonna succeed with Portal is just like purely win streaking, and then you're gonna need to roll less times than other people on average because you're gonna be buying uncontested units like Rise and Taric. And then you're gonna use that money from like win streaking and like rolling less to be able to go 9 for stuff like Nora, and then try to get as many placements as possible. The issue with it is that it just doesn't cap that high. So even like with the perfect setup, like the win streak, the good augments, the barely roll for the Rise Taric 2 kind of games, like the perfect setup. Whereas in other comps, like you would expect to play for like first in a spot like that. With Portal, you're still just probably going to get like a third or a fourth, which doesn't feel great. I don't know. It's like a really, really strong early mid game, and it's like the easiest thing to play from that strong early mid game. So I don't think it's completely terrible.
Yeah, and I think it's, maybe not necessarily adjusting your expectations to go first, but landing in that top 4 if you can snowball your early game. And if anything, playing Portal will show you how strong those Jace and Zoe starts are, because those units are very good early game. You can build around them appropriately, especially with Portal and Shapeshifters early. Very, very good. Speaking of Zoe, a newer comp that's starting to leak from Korea, and also you discovered early on in the PvE cycle as well, is Zoe Reroll. Hot off the press. This is actually just like a couple hours ago. People started going viral. We're like, we were kind of hoping that this one would stay hidden, but because that was like a Dishsoap original. So talk to me about Zoe Reroll. What exactly makes it good, and what exactly is the board?
Oh, I mean, I just kind of theorycrafted it because like I thought the Ari Arcana bonus was like so abusable, and I was just trying to find a way to like fit as many idiot 3-stars on the board to like buff up the Arcana bonus. And it just turns out that you can like reroll Poppy and Zoe because they have Witchcraft, and then Zoe's a Scholar with Ari. And then you play like Lilia for like another Bastion. So there's just a bunch of 3-stars you can go for. And then you could like buff up the Arcana bonus, and then you just get a bunch of AP to your whole team. It's just like super, super simple to play.
Yeah, it's really good. Make sure you get like blue buff on Zoe. I think that's one thing that's important to help ramp up her damage early, and especially if you have like an augment like Spellblades, it just goes kind of crazy with it. So just be very mindful about this reroll comp. I don't know how popular it's going to be, but apparently it's starting to hit like the Korea. I'm not sure if it's like the YouTube Korea scene, but they're starting, and we know Korea loves one cost reroll. And it might start to spread because of that, and it might hit the data sites. So I just want to be put out for the record. Dishsoap did it first.
I don't know. The thing is, like, I was like just like theorycrafting random boards. I didn't even like play it once ever. Like this was like weeks ago on PvE. But like Frodan was like asking me to like add some comps. I was like, okay, like let me just think of like, oh, what can use this Ari Arcana bonus. I was like, okay, let me just put these random units in here. And the fact that it is a comp is just kind of weird. The thing is, it's also the Poppy hero augment board we theorycrafted. I don't actually know if you want to take that in this line because I don't think it makes her more tanky, and it's more of like a Zoe carry thing. but it is like the exact same board with tier capture for that, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think it actually is the best Poppy Hero Augment one because it just lets you do the same exact thing, except there's a little bit of friction behind who you want to actually Arcana Charm, because you would theoretically want to Arcana Charm Hecarim to improve Poppy for the AD and the durability, but then at a certain point, you're probably gonna have to like go back to Arcana Charming Ari for the AP, because that's where the real late game damage is. But Witchy Wallop is not generally very good right now. So, and we're not going to cover every single comp today. We're probably just going to wrap up A tier, tell you about a couple of our B tier comps, and then move on to the rest of this episode. At the very bottom of A tier, we have Neela and Akali reroll. This composition can pop off. I've seen it do pretty well with Pyro Emblem on Neela in particular. Is that the condition that you need to play Neela, or is there something else as well?
It's mostly like a thing where you like play off the lobby. Nyla 2 with Eldritch is going to be one of the strongest openers in the game. Pairs with Akali really well because it's a warrior and then it fits with Ashe with multi-striker. So like it's just a very strong opener. And if you're like kind of in a lobby with a lot of reroll, a lot of 2-cost reroll, which is very popular in this meta, you can just like take that and like they'll take a bunch of other like Kog'Maws and Syndra's and Nunu's out of the pool. And then you can just roll for Nyla like a lot easier. And then just kind of ride off the tempo of that and then get your top 4. I think that's like the main scenario you play it in. Pyro Spout definitely is like pretty big for her though. I think that's like where she gets super strong.
Yep, the attack speed, Pyro, Emblem, Infinity Edge, and then whatever last time that kind of makes sense. If it's something for defensive or maybe even Hodge, if you really need that extra Omnivamp.
Yep,
something to think about. Okay, out of all the B tier comps, I'll list several of them. Tell me one comp that you think either you like or has potential. So we have Mages, we have Olaf Frost, we have Swain, we have Vertical Eldritch, we got Scholar Rise, Warwick, Spin to Win Wukong, and then other forms of Fast 9 featuring like Milio and Nora. So tell me, or even some of the other C tier comps that I haven't mentioned, like High Horsepower Lilia, if you want to name that one. Tell me one of your favorites here.
Okay, I'll tell you like one of the ones that can pop off, and I'll tell you like my actual like favorite. Like Veigar Vex is on average, I think is like pretty mid, but if you can like, especially 3-star Vex and 3-star Veigar, like if you can get to that, it is a very, very strong setup, especially if you get Nora late game. She's one of like the strongest utility units. So like it's a B tier comp because on average you're not going to hit that stuff. Hitting a 3-star 3-cost in this meta is kind of crazy when everyone's rolling 2 costs, but if you can get there, it's really good. But my personal, like I wouldn't say it's like favorite, but like a fun unit I've been having like actual fun with this set is Olaf.
Olaf.
Yeah, mostly like playing him in the place of like where people would play Fiora and like these in these like preserver setups, because he fits with like Zillion and they could play like Diana or like Twitch for Hunter, and then you can give him the melee items like you would give Fiora. He's not that good, but it's just kind of like the unit itself is just kind of fun. Like I said, I had more fun going 5th with Olaf than I did going like 3rd with Karma. So I don't know.
Olaf is very fun.
Yeah.
Also, it's kind of an interesting unit to itemize right now, because so many times with these melee champs, you're like, do I want like Quicksilver on him? But he has kind of like built-in Quicksilver, but it like toggles. Was like actually not like bad sometimes. Plus, he wants attack speed, and it's kind of weird. I think the big problem with Olaf right now is his Frost Shell is not great. I think part of what makes Frost really difficult is the opener of Frost is particularly weak on stage 2 and going into stage 3 unless you're high rolling. And then the second thing is I don't even think we really know what good Olaf items are. It might actually end up in a spot where you're just saying whatever on him. We get him to a baseline power level where it's okay to just like slam anything for tempo. But at the moment, I couldn't tell you what it is.
You want to go like BT Starix in another item. I'm not sure what the best third item is.
Okay.
We're thinking like maybe Edge of Night or like Infinity Edge or something. But
Infinity Edge. Okay.
Yeah, we're not entirely sure.
All right, so that is our wrap up of the meta. If you want to hear a little bit more about it, including some of our sleeper picks, we put out a newsletter that we update a couple times a patch. It's called our Meta Read for our Patreon subscribers. So thank you for everyone who's a gold and prismatic supporter. Couldn't do it without you. Let's go ahead and move on to our second main thing of the podcast, which is fact or fraud. I throw out a couple statements about the meta, and we asked it, is it true? Is it false? Is it fact? Or is it fraudulent? First one, we kind of touched this a little bit during the meta section, which is the best craftable emblem in the stats is Pyro Emblem. But the reason why this might be kind of surprising is a lot of people are talking about like Witchcraft Emblem being very, very good, and like the thing that you auto slam and go for. So Dishsoap, best craftable emblem stats, Pyro Emblem, Factor Fraud.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say either this one or Witchcraft is the best. I think like early on in the stats it was Witchcraft, but I guess it shifted over to Pyro recently. But yeah, I think it's really good with Nyla. I think it's really good. Like it enables Varus. I think like Pyro Smolder with Varus is actually like a super, super solid comp. And then like the Witchcraft is like a little sus because like all the units are probably just turbo contested, and you really, really need the Morgana to truly enable it. So I could see that being the reason why that it shifted.
Yeah, and I also think that with the Witchcraft Emblem in particular, I think it sometimes baits people into feeling like they have to be playing specific types of boards. In reality, Witchcraft Emblem is quite flexible because people think, oh, I have to play it on Karma and I have to go for Stitch Witchcraft, which if you can get that set up, it's really good. But the reality is that just gives you more modularity to things. There's been times where you're playing Witchcraft and you have Karma, and you have Fiora, and you have Morgana, but you kind of don't want to play like a fourth Witchcraft in that situation if you don't have like that Nico setup, or vice versa, you don't have Morgana. That gives you a little bit of more leeway in terms of what you can play around the board. And I think that's ultimately another thing about Witchcraft Emblem. As people get better at playing this line, I think the stats are going to go up.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Statement number 2. Briar is the best performing 5-cost in raw AVP alongside Camille. Briar is like a unit that people like hate on. They're like, Briar's not that good. She's fake. Is this fact or fraud?
Well, it's fact, but this is just like a lesson in how you should like interpret like overall average stats. Like this doesn't mean that Briar and Camille are the best 5-costs. I don't think that's necessarily true. But what this does mean is that the comps running Briar and Camille are performing the best. And what comp probably wants to run Briar? Oh, look at that. It's like Syndra, the best comp for the game. And what comp wants to run Camille? Oh, probably Multi-Striker is one of the best reroll comps. So I think it's like, I don't know if you want to call it fake, but I think a lot of the average placement is getting boosted by the fact that they are like the caps of some of these late game, like very strong reroll comps.
Yeah, they are good for a reason. More think about critically, like, why is that case? And also a shout out to the fact that Morgana is immensely popular. This is one of the most popular 5-costs we've had in quite some time. I think she's averaging over a 2 play rate. Yeah,
that is the highest player I've ever seen for a 5-cost. It's actually crazy.
And so her AVP has to be worse because she's played so often. So multiple boards are going to like be dragging down to AVP when they just splash in that Morgana and lose. Statement number 3, 6 Hunter averages 4.22. While 4 Hunter averages a 4.24, basically the same thing. 4 to 6 Hunter, no diff. Is that fact or fraud?
I mean, it's kind of fact. The thing is, the Hunter trait has like basically no internal synergy besides literally like Frost with Twitch and Olaf. And those units aren't even good. Mm-hmm. So if you're playing a 6 Hunter board, you're pretty much just playing 6 Hunter. With like nothing else, like you'll play like a random Frost, you're playing 6 Hunter, 3 Frost, yay. You have a bunch of backline idiots, and then an Olaf who's gonna get focused down early. The only way I've like ever seen this do okay is like if you're playing like the Jinx Wukong reroll, somehow you get a Hunter +1, and then you level to 8 for like 6 Hunter. But even then, I'd just feel more confident playing more frontline and like dropping 2 of the Hunters, for example.
At least you had fun. You said the most fun 5th you ever had.
Okay. Well, the thing is, I don't like playing Hunter Olaf. I like playing Olaf just as like a bad Fiora, you know?
I see. Fiora at home.
Yeah.
Statement number 4, 9 Frost is the best performing non-prismatic vertical at averaging a 2.5. This is a prismatic vertical is like 10 Eldritch or 10 Portal. So out of all the 9s, Frost is the best. Is that fact or fraud?
Oh, I think that's like extremely fraudulent. I don't know. I'd like, I don't know, like if the world was invaded by aliens and I had to play like one game of TFT with a 9 trait or like a non-prismatic vertical, I would not trust the human race playing 9 Frost. I'd play like Witchcraft or something.
Okay, what if you had 9 Frost, but you had Frosty Frontline, the very cringy Eternal Winter target dummy?
No, I'm still taking a Witchcraft.
What about, okay, let's talk about the other verticals. Like, what about 9 Fairy or 9 Multi-Striker?
Oh, like, honestly, maybe I'll go Multi-Striker. I don't know about Fairy. I've seen Fairy lose pretty badly before. I mean, I've seen a lot of 8 Witchcraft. 8 Witchcraft seems pretty strong. I haven't seen 9 Multi, though. So maybe 9 Multi is the strongest.
It's really hard to hit, which is why I thought the data would be better on that. But when I checked, it was slightly better than 9 multis. It might actually change by the time this recording releases, but it was very, very close. Okay, statement number 5. School mascot is clickable for any Eldritch spot, even if you're just going to stay on 3 or 5 Eldritch. Fact or fraud?
Well, if you're gonna like play 3 Eldritch for the entire game, I don't think you want to take Skull Mascot. But for 5 Eldritch, I definitely think it's a very powerful buff. And it's a very good augment. For me though, specifically, like, I just don't want to stay on 5 Eldritch or 7 Eldritch regardless. But if you are choosing to play like 5+ Eldritch, I think it's like definitely worth it.
Yeah, you're an Eldritch hater. Why is that?
I just think the comp like lacks single target damage heavily. And then the single target damage that does exist in the comp is just Syndra, and I don't think the best version of Syndra is vertical Eldritch. So that's just the main reason.
Okay, that's fair. Also, I mean, Mord 3 is sometimes your second carry, which is not great. And if you think Briar can carry in that spot, you clearly haven't played Briar very much in vertical Eldritch. It's super hit or miss. I personally think that Briar is, whether or not she can get access to the backline with her first jump into Fear, it determines entirely almost the fight of whether or not she has impact. If she lands and starts attacking frontline like for Khan or Nasus, she doesn't do anything. She gets to the backline, you like 8-0 the entire board. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I completely expect Briar to be as like powerful as she is right now. Because to me, it just feels like the Olaf and the Scion of the set. Like I'm not really, or not the Olaf, the Udyr.
Udyr.
Yeah, the Udyr or the Scion of the set. Just like they have the ability to carry a little bit, but
40% of the time they like do something crazy, but 60% of the time they're just like whatever.
Yeah, above else they're just like the 5-cost disruption tank. I'm not really expecting that much out of her. If you just value like having a bunch of HP and like the fear, she's gonna do enough.
Oh! I do have to ask you this question. Are you letting Briar bite you? Giving her the little cookie?
Okay. I usually say no, but I actually like two games I just randomly like fed her, like just like try it, and I won both those games. But I don't really think it was like because I fed her. I think it was just because like I was so high roll, it didn't matter. But
same thing with me. That least game I told you about, where I played the hero augment and I high rolled the Briar. I was so far ahead. I was like 86 HP. I was like, I might as well just start biting. And that Briar was so unkillable by the end of the game. So maybe it's probably just like a win more thing, but
yeah,
it is kind of fun. I'm not gonna lie. I'm enjoying that mechanic more than I thought I would. All right, let's talk about charms, our main topic, our fundamentals 101 for today. So with charms, that is a set mechanic where you get a purchasable buff in your shop every 3 rounds in the early stage of the game. Then from stage 5 onwards, it's every 2 shops, and they range from 0 gold, free impact, low impact, but kind of like minor buffs of gold or a little bit of extra stuff, all the way to some crazy stuff. And I mean, there are some egregious charms in the late stages of the game where you either stall out for an entire turn and don't die. They call it desperate plea. Some people are referring to this as ice block, like the secret from Hearthstone back in the day. Or summoning a crazy like 4,000 HP dragon, or in the extreme scenarios, there's actually a stage 7 charm where you could get a 3-star 5 cost. But that I've never even seen that one. It's completely impractical. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about charms as much as we can within the time that we have. So let's start from the beginning. Stage 2 onwards, from 2-1, you're offered a charm. How are you personally approaching early game charms, Dishsoap?
I'm just pretty much clicking almost anything. The only ones I wouldn't click is like sometimes the polymorph if I feel like my opener is like too synergistic and I don't really want to get rid of any of the 1 costs. And then sometimes if I was loose streaking, I might not take Minor Wish if it costed me econ. It's the only charm on stage 2 that costs you anything. But other than that, I'm pretty much just going to click on every other charm. I think they're just all pure benefit.
Yep, same here. I do think that there are fun moments with the polymorph. If you get a 2-star, you know those stars where you get like a couple of 2-star 1 cost, but they have like no direct synergy whatsoever. It's like Seraphine and like a melee carry some kind
like
of
Seraphine
like, okay,
Jax.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, huh, what do I do with this? Polymorph there could be actually super clutch. And also, I do want to say it is hilarious, but it's also complete BS that you can get living or a Build-A-Bud 1 cost 3-star out of nowhere, and then you polymorph that into a 3-star 2 cost. And some people have like Syndra 3 and Cassin 3 at 2-1, which is absolutely crazy. And some people, Leduc, cough cough, has actually gone so far as to go for a 1 to 2 cost polymorph and the 2 to 3 cost polymorph, hit Recon Bob, go into the 4 to 5 cost polymorph for charms. It's just silly.
Yeah, like I was watching Kyun play like earlier, and he got the build-a-bud into the 2 cost, and then got the 2 into the 3, and then he got a silver augment on 3-2, and he didn't roll the last one to try to see Recon Bob. Kind of boring.
I didn't realize Kyun has become so bench.
Yeah.
When is it correct to sacrifice a little bit of econ to pick an early game charm? Let's say you're in the spot where you want to make either your first 10 or 19 to 20 gold.
I mean, the only scenario where this is going to come up is like on that specific portal where like you get expensive charms earlier, or specifically with Minor Wish, because usually most of the early game charms are 0 gold. And with Minor Wish specifically, I would only not buy it if I'm like loose streaking anyways. I think generally the table of Minor Wish is just super, super solid to pick. The worst ones are the ones that actually give you like just temporary combat, but usually the temporary combat is enough to win you the round anyways, if you have a decent board. So I don't know. If you're trying to make 10, like if you're on like the break point and you're like trying to loose streak, I wouldn't buy Minor Wish, but otherwise I think you just buy it. I think it's good.
Are you ever rolling for charms in stage 2?
Not really. The only times I would roll for charms in stage 2 is like when I would want to roll like in stage 2 anyways, which is very rare. It's just specifically a spot where you're win streaking and you have a lot of like pairs that you can hit. And you're like trying to like upgrade a couple things to like push that one more win. And this like maybe you get a charm along with it. I did it a couple times on PB. I haven't really had a spot for doing it on live, but I think it's extremely rare.
I will say one thing is that because rolling is more prevalent this set, there's a lot of different things that give you reroll, not just like the new trade sector or things like Prismatic Ticket, but also Patience is a Virtue, or you get Minor Wish into free rerolls. That free reroll counts towards your likelihood of seeing the next charm sooner as well, so they can compound onto itself, which kind of goes back to one of the charms being a little bit problematic in my opinion. Is the one that gives you a free reroll to look at all 1 costs. And then because that helps you upgrade your board and accelerate your charm count, which can help you get more powerful. It's actually kind of crazy.
There's actually like I don't know if it shows up on stage 2, but there's like 2 of them. I think there's like one that makes it like you see a 1 cost, and there's one that just rolls your shop to 1 cost lower, which is basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Both are really good.
I think it does show up on stage 2, but
I believe it does.
Yeah.
I believe it does.
So there's like you have 2 chances to get the reroll your shop one, which is like probably one of the best ones you can see as your first one.
I have this in stage 2, but also could apply to other scenarios of charms. When do you ever delay charms? Because as you know, if you buy a charm in the middle of combat, it doesn't take place as it's happening. So if you get like buff your highest HP units a little bit, if you click it after the fight has been decided of who you're matching up against, you're not going to get it till the next round. So you like lose your charm, but you could use that tactically to try and in different situations. So when are you ever delaying your charms?
If you like are in like a 4-player scenario or something, and like you're gonna beat one person, but you're gonna maybe struggle against like the next person you're gonna fight next. Like you see like a very good combat charm, like an earthquake or something in your shop. Maybe you don't want to buy it for the next fight, but you buy it, or you don't want to buy it for like the upcoming fight. You want to buy it for the next fight. That's one of the scenarios. You can also do it like situationally. We talked about Minor Wish, for example. Sometimes you just randomly win a round on like 2-2 when you like maybe wanted to like lose streak, you were level 3 or something. But after you winning the round, maybe it like pushed you over the econ threshold and maybe like 11 gold left. You can buy the Minor Wish and like maybe play for like a 2 streak the next turn. That's definitely a spot. Also, there's like a specific charm that like rolls your shop automatically for 20 seconds. If that shows up on 4-1, but you're trying to roll for like a comp on 4-2, I've seen like not necessarily delaying it, because I believe it's one of the charms that does activate like during combat, like it will start rolling your shop. But I've seen people lock that one specifically to 4-2 so they can actually get the better rolls than 8.
That one's cool. I like that one.
But yeah, there's probably more scenarios, but that's just like the main stuff I'm thinking about. It's definitely like more niche, but it definitely can't come up.
There's a couple other ones that come to mind. If you're playing like a lose streak, let's say you pick Fortune Favors the Bold and you have Crystal Ball, and it's something that you want to delay because you want to see like who you're lose streaking. It might be one of those dynamics where you could click that. Another could be if you have the equivalent of the Kha'Zix encounter where it discounts leveling by 1. It's a Xerath charm. I actually had a play where at the end of stage 5, I believe, or I forgot what, maybe stage 4. Either way, I carried it over because it was like 4-6 or 5-6. I locked it for 2 rounds and then clicked that charm to do a crazy like 5-1, 6-1, like level up and roll down on 9. So those are a couple of different ways you can think about it, but we're picking pretty obscure things, and so hopefully this helps communicate that you're not generally supposed to do that. But if you can figure out a powerful justification, it needs to be a really good reason. There can be moments to do that. You mentioned one time that you actually really like stage 3 and 4 charms. So why is that?
I don't like, as in like I like how strong they are. It's not like a gameplay thing. I just like it like as an enjoyment thing. I think the mechanic feels the best to me on stage 3 and 4, just because it's like those are the stages of the game where like building up your econ is the most important. So if you, and like the charms in that stage aren't like that crazy powerful. So to me, it feels like the best balance of like playing for like a strong board and win streak while also like trying to save your money for later. I think it plays really well there. My problem was like at stage 2, I felt like some of the charms were too swingy compared to the other ones. Like you can get Crystal Ball, and the other person can get like 2 1-cost shops that upgrade their whole board, which is not the greatest. And then on like stage 5 plus, there's some like ridiculous combat ones that can just completely swing fights, which I don't really enjoy the most. But I think in like stage 3 and 4, when you have to actually like sacrifice a meaningful amount of gold for your future in order to like play for a win, I think that's like feels pretty good for like a mechanic.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of nuance of how you manage your gold around it, whether or not you're even going to intentionally sack a little bit to roll 1 extra time because you know that your next shop will give you a charm, or vice versa, where you kind of recognize that you shouldn't be rolling because you kind of need to wait for 1 more turn, go at 3-5 to level 7. Like these kinds of dynamics, I think, are much more interesting. The mid game was sort of becoming a lost art in the previous set once the 4-cost patch came out, because people were just skipping straight to level 8 for a while. And everyone was talking about like, am I ever going to play stage 3 again? And I think one thing that Charms has done really well is give us a lot of mid-game things to think about. You're not always playing the mid-game, but at least you have a lot of things to potentially consider. And also, I think that's partially what makes re-rolling even stronger, because if you're re-rolling and you're rolling above 50 gold, you can roll twice and look at every charm and then evaluate if it's even worth picking up or skipping at that turn. So I like those dynamics. It gives you much more to consider.
Yeah, that's like my main enjoyment from that.
How do you approach buying charms on a fast 8 roll down? Are you buying it earlier to improve shop odds, or are you just going to let that fly and every 3 shops or so lose that 5th slot?
I just want to buy the first thing that's reasonable to buy. Like I want to say like anything like 2 gold and below that does something, I just buy it. Like immediately, just so I can see better shops. This doesn't even like apply to just fast 8 roll downs. This applies for like your 3-2 reroll roll down. Like I'm just buying the first charm I see. It applies to like your 3-1 like 1-cost hyper roll scenarios as well. Like I think whenever there's a scenario where you want to like roll a lot of gold, you just buy like the first, like probably the first or second charm you see, if it's like not terrible.
Don't have much to add there, so let's ask my next question. This one's a fun one. How bad is it to take things like component anvil, uncraftable emblems, spatulas? I mean, it's hard to resist it at times, isn't it? It could be anything.
Well, I think like the 3 examples you said there are actually like very different. I don't think it's fair to like paint them all with one brush.
Okay.
Component anvil specifically, I think is the one you're probably going to buy the most. It costs 8 gold. I believe there was an encounter last set, Tom Kinch, that either gave you 8 gold or a component anvil, and very often you would choose one or the other. You would want to take the component more if you like really needed to finish like another item. So you're rerolling like Cinder or Cast, and you really need to finish that like Shodan or the Rage Blade. Anvil's going to be way more important than 8 gold. But if your items are already looking pretty solid, you're probably just going to skip it, save your gold. I think the 15 gold for an uncraftable emblem, in my opinion, is like you almost never buy it.
No, don't say that.
It's definitely super fun. I bought it a lot on PvE. There's definitely some spots where it could just straight up win you the game, because like say you get like a Berserker emblem or something for 15 gold, it's definitely worth it. But on average, if you do the math, there's like most comps can only use like 3 or 4 uncraftable emblems, and there's like I don't know, like there's like 20 of them, 16, something like that. There's just a bunch of
I
them.
think there's like over 20.
Yeah, there's just a bunch of them that are just like completely terrible. And if you take 15, if you spend 15 of your gold in like stage 3 or 4 for basically nothing, you are going to lose. Yeah, like just think of it as like you rolled 7.5 times and you didn't buy anything. You would just think your game is over, right? You rolled 7 times and you missed. That's kind of, that's kind of the same thing. So I think that one is like, I don't know. Maybe like if you're like in a really, really desperate scenario and you just think you need to hit the 1 in whatever, like the 1 in 20 to win, or to like even top 4, like maybe you click it. But other than that, no, not really. And then spatula, 15 gold as well is uncraftable. But the thing is, like with the spatula specifically, you can like craft it with something and make something specific. So this one you're gonna buy a lot more. Something to consider is like making like the pyro or portal emblem for those comps that really want it, or like the witchcraft emblem. Could definitely swing those comps. So if you really need one, I think it's definitely worth it to buy a lot of the time.
I always see chat talk about like buy it because you never know. Maybe you get the other charm that like you kill a unit and you get a component and it could be the exact spat you need. Or if you go on stage 6, it's like a component. It's like, oh, that was your 10 portal, man. You just missed 10 portal. It's so annoying, but it's funny because they're right like half the time in the sense that it would have lined up that way so far in my experience, which is just hilarious.
Yeah.
On that note, I do want to say one thing about uncraftable emblems. If you have flexible and you're in this economic spot where you can afford it, I've seen people do it, and it just kind of adds to that tally. So
I still wouldn't even take it with flexible. It's like
really not even with flexible.
Yeah, for sure. 15 gold is like crazy. Like,
it is a lot, but I've seen people take it.
Okay, well, yeah, sure. But I mean, like, I would like consider it flexible if it was like 10 maybe. Like I don't even know if 10 is a fair price. Like because the thing is, it shows up on like stage 3 or stage 4, which is where your gold matters the most. Fair
enough. Okay, teach their own. Stage 5 onwards. Okay, so stage 5, it changes the dynamics of every 2 shops. So you generally want to be buying combat at this stage of the game because that's where most people are late games are culminating. If you're buying like econ, you're going to be significantly weaker. In a lot of cases, you're basically down a combat augment, which everyone knows is going to swing your placement range considerably within the range that you're set in. So the question becomes, when are you not taking some of the combat charms? Are you ever taking like, some of these cheap ones like Bramble or Declaw or like Major Wish, which is like kind of another like roll the dice. It could be anything.
Yeah, I'd say like if you feel like you need, like if you feel like your board's not done yet, I don't think it's like a necessity unless you're like actually 1 life to roll for like the super, super powerful combat charms. I think just like buying the okay ones and like using like your natural roll is like completely fine. If you're like trying to like push 9 or like upgrade your board a little bit more.
If you're pushing levels, are you always rolling to buy charms on your way up to like a fast 9 or like a level 9 inevitably? Or are you just kind of like trying to focus on your econ and just actually sacking those rounds?
It's like a hard question to answer. The actual answer is just going to be like it depends kind of thing. But
classic.
But I want to say like if you're level 9 with a lot of gold and you're trying to like 9 or like 5/5, for example, like after the stage 5 carousel, I think you could probably even afford like rolling once every single turn and buying the charm.
What is the best late game charm in your opinion? And you could include Xerath or standard charms.
Oh, including everything, it's still just the dragon. Sometimes the Xerath one that like upgrades all your 1 stars is better because like if you have like a bunch of 1-star 5 costs like available like on the bench, like that can be the most powerful one. But usually it's just going to be the Elder Dragon. It just does like so much damage and has so much health. I don't know. The charm's just OP.
I consider the strongest one to be Desperate Plea, but that's because it swings the most amount of placements.
Yeah, I can see that.
So it's not strong in its own right. Like if anything, it doesn't do anything except make sure you can't die. But for what we're trying to hope for, it's like, I mean, it's not even necessarily like OP in the sense that it's just broken. I think straight up, maybe in the most literal sense of how we usually define things. It's just not actually good for the game, in my opinion. I don't know if whether or not you think that Desperate Plea there's room for that design wise of why it should be good, but I personally don't want it to be in TFT.
I mean, we both played Hearthstone and we both saw the fun that was Ice Block. And
True, can't argue that. I give it maybe like 2-3 more patches before Riot moves it. I feel like they wouldn't remove something so early. They have disabled things. Remember, they disabled like level up and high-end shopping before towards the end of the set. There's a prismatic that gave you access to shop tier higher. Maybe they'll do something like that with Desperate Pay later on. Or one thing I would love for Riot to do is rotate charms. Charms aren't going to stay forever, so maybe a batch goes out like halfway through and a new batch comes in. All of a sudden, let's say Bounce is in a good spot. That's a new way to spice up the game without having to feel like let's ruin the balance to just make it more interesting for no reason.
Yeah, that actually sounds like a pretty good idea. Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, okay. This is day one of our campaign. Sign my petition.
Yeah, I don't know if they have like enough time to do that, but I'm down. It seems like a fun way to like spice it up like 2 months into the set.
All right, so that is our charms fundamentals. We'll revisit that topic somewhere down the road if we feel like there's a big shakeup of some kind. Hope that gets you guys off on the right foot. Let's go ahead and wrap this up with a pop quiz and a couple of questions. So Dishsoap ending with a really good hit rate. You were at 72% for set 11. Let's see if you could do better for set 12. Okay, so first question here. We're going to start things off the first episode a little bit lighter in terms of the broad concept. So I'm not going to go too obscure. What is the worst performing 3-star 4-cost in AVP right now?
Oh, I have no idea. Let me just guess. You can see my screen. I'm not looking at the stats or anything. I'm just looking at the units.
Okay. I'm going to actually look.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's pulling up Team Builder right now on his client.
Okay, so the only one I've personally hit is Gwen and Nami 3. And Gwen was not that good, and Nami was pretty good. I saw a clip on YouTube Shorts of Kalista 3 like killing everything. It looked broken, so probably not that one.
Okay.
I've lost to Tarek 3, but I didn't know if it did anything. Can't show you just the CC one. I don't know. It's probably like Tarek or like what's Rakan? I don't even know what Rakan does. Like I'm just gonna say Tarek. Yeah, Tarek.
Okay. It's the answer is Varus. Oh. Varus is actually like noticeably the worst 4-cost 3-star.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
And a lot of people are really unhappy about that because it's like, well, if it's uncontested, at least maybe like, the 3-star Varus can pop off. Nope. 3-star Varus loses a lot, apparently. It's like a 1.7 or something.
Yeah, the clip I saw was Kalista 3 beating Varus 3, Nasus 3, and I think Kench 3 as well.
Oh, for what it's worth, I just looked it up. Tarek was the second worst at 1.6.
Oh,
so pretty close.
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad. Okay, question number 2. What unit has the highest play rate in the game right now?
Oh, I looked at this earlier. Like, it's just Rakan. Like, when you talked about Morgana. I mean, it makes sense. Like everyone's playing the Berserker frontline. He's the 4-cost tank that holds down the front line. I mean, I can get this without even looking at it. Like, Rakan's going to see play on every board that wants to play Berserkers, or every board that wants to play Morgana.
Okay, what's the second most play rate unit in the game?
Okay, this one I wouldn't have actually gotten, but it's Zilean for like the same reason.
Oh, you actually remember that too, yeah. Dude. You remembered more than that. All right, can't catch this guy off guard. Yeah, that's what blew me away. I was like, what, Zilean's second most? But it makes sense.
The third is Morgana. I couldn't tell you what the fourth was. I don't remember if that's that.
Nasus.
Okay.
What is the best performing Radiant item?
I think it's Deathcap or Spark. Because I was looking at this one time because I had the prismatic transform thingy. I'm gonna say Deathcap.
It is not Deathcap. It is Spear of Shojin this set.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. Spear of Shojin is the best performing. I think it's because of how warping it can be on units like Syndra.
Oh, Syndra, yeah.
But the second place one is what's really surprising to me, which is Radiant Vow Bulwark Orth, which is like insanely good on some units like Tarek, for example. So just something to think about. I'm not entirely sure if that's just because who's picking that many Radiant items this early set. It could be a sample size issue.
Yeah, when I was looking at the sample, I think it was legit less than 500 games. Yeah. So okay, well,
fair enough.
I mean, I think Radiant Shodan specifically is just broken on Syndra, and Syndra is broken. So the stats are actually crazy. So yeah, I can see it for sure. All
right, no worries. Let's see if you can redeem yourself in this next question. What is the absolute worst performing augment in the stat across every category?
Oh, I know this. It's What the Forge.
Do you know what it averages by any chance?
It's between 5.4 and 5.6. I'm just gonna say Like, yeah, 5.53. Yeah, sure.
No, it's even worse. It's
Oh,
a
really?
5.75.
Holy, okay.
It is awful. It is awful.
Okay. Wait, okay.
Yeah.
When I look at Emerald Plus, it averages a 6.
It's even worse when you sort for high rank.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is god awful. I originally this was a factor fraud, but I put it into the pop quiz because I know you love looking at augment stats. Is it actually that bad though?
Yeah,
Or
there's just so many artifacts that just don't do anything, like at all. Like it's not like they're like just like not impactful. They are actually just like downgrades on your units. Like stuff like Cutlass and Prowler's Claw, if you don't have like an assassin or something, just don't do anything. Vampiric Scepter is good on one unit in the game. Warwick, it's bad on every other unit, I think.
yeah,
And then like those are just the like straight up bad ones, and the ones that just aren't that impactful are just gonna be stuff like your Ludens, Lichbane,
right.
Forbidden
Claw.
Idol, yeah, just stuff like that.
Makes sense to me.
There's just too many niche items. I don't know.
Makes me really miss Trash to Treasure. That augment was just awesome because you could reforge those artifacts alongside those items and just keep it going.
Yeah, I mean the problem with that is that there's actually like too many like combos that would just be too broken if you could force.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I really hate that they removed Trash to Treasure for like the trash that we have now.
Basically, what the forge.
Yeah.
Last question. Let's see if we can end +1 here. What is the highest win rate augment in the game alongside Sugarcraft Crown and Golden Egg?
Is it?
So it's like a 3-way dead heat between these.
Is
three.
it Fortune favors the bold?
No, it is Support Golem number 2.
Okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, maybe, yeah.
It's so broken that it ends up being the highest win rate augment as well. Just to go show you, and we didn't really cover this because we haven't done like an augment for the set.
I'm looking right now. It says Fortune favors the bold's the highest win rate. I mean,
Is it?
Not at Gold Plus. At Emerald Plus, it is. It's fine though. It's fine. Just low sample size. All good.
Okay.
I was wrong.
Actually, the stats did change. You know what? Let's throw out that question then. That's only fair.
Okay.
And it's kind of, but it's good to know because I am clicking through it and flexible and eternal growth and school mascot. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff there. Okay. Never mind. That question was fraudulent. I'm the fraud. All right. A couple questions from our patrons. Thank you so much for everyone who signed up for it. Part of it is that you get to submit some of these questions. From Carl, how do you approach learning a new set? As a new player, a new set is incredibly daunting, and most people come to likes of TFTAcademy just to hard force the S tier comp. We know that's not optimal. So how do you guys approach efficiently and effectively learning a new TFT set?
For me, it's just gonna be like, I mean, I do this on PBE, but you can really just do it on live when the set comes out. It's just like playing, I want to say like 20 or 30 games where you're just like trying all the like specific stuff and like just getting used to the units. Like specifically on PBE, I would basically just take any single spat augment that like would open up a line for me, just to like try out like all the units at the start, just so like I kind of had a base idea of what they kind of did and how they kind of fit together. And then after I had like a few reps of that, after I felt comfortable like doing some like roll downs and stuff, is when I like looked to like actually play some of the meta stuff. And I think if you want to like be good throughout a set, I think that's like one of the best ways to do it. Like just put yourself out there. You're not gonna climb a bunch of LP doing this, but you're gonna get familiar with the units. You're gonna like build up the muscle memory, so that when the meta changes, say like after like a B patch like Syndra or something, you're gonna be prepared and you can like look at a meta comp and like know relatively quickly like how to play it well.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Dishsoap said. I think one tip on top of that I would give is that I think this is where Hyper Roll really shines as a game mode for people who want to get a lot of repetitions in. Let's say you're not playing a lot of PBE, but you're starting off at the beginning of the set. Hyper Roll, you can play 2 to 3 times more games of a Hyper Roll than you can of regular, and you don't have to put your LP on the line. If you care about your Hyper Roll rank, that's different, but I personally think it's good. And the best part is you're kind of naturally forced to level, so you see more units instead of just like kind of spending your gold for like the reroll. And you get to even practice your roll downs, because with Hyper Roll, you can intentionally stockpile your gold, practice like a level 6 with like 30, 40 gold, or practice like a level 8 and go for like a lot and kind of just dip out. And I think that way you're kind of getting the experience of flashcards in a way, but without having to just like memorize everything. Because I think just straight up sitting down and like reading everything is boring for a lot of players. getting those quick reps could be huge, I think, to learning a new set on top of what Dishsoap is saying. All right, from D. Joe. If I get pretty straightforward line at 2-1 with my augments, I can usually guide myself to a top 4, no problem. However, if the lines are more blurred, it's hard to figure out what to play, and I go bot 4.
There's not gonna be like a very good answer to this, especially early in the set when the balance is not good. But typically, I don't know. Like when the balance is like slightly better and like a lot more stuff is actually playable, specifically some of like the 3 and 4 cost stuff, I think just taking an open line is going to be more rewarding than it is right now. Right now, I think the meta is just like a little too narrow for stuff like that to really work out that often. So it's like kind of a hard question to answer because like the answer to it is like play whatever uncontested line exists in like your lobby, for instance. But right now, that's just not going to go well for you just because the balance is bad.
My answer to that is if the lines are very blurred, I think you should err on the side of safety of what you do know. And if you, that actually is a learning moment. Every single game you play in TFT, assuming your goal is to climb, that's what you're here to do with TFT Academy, you learn something. You learn what you don't know. If the lines are blurred, that means you don't know where you're going to land on. That is a studying opportunity because you say, hey, there's a spot in my knowledge that I'm actually gapped. And that's where you can go and like, hey, I had these items, I had these augment choices. What could I have actually done? And then study off of that. And that's actually what top players do. They just realize there's knowledge gaps that they have, and that's how they can improve. That's how they study for tournaments. So what you're describing, Djo, is actually very close to what top players are also trying to do because they're like Dishsoap doesn't know the answer to a lot of questions right now. I mean, same with me. We're sharing what we do know, but the reality is our knowledge is like only beginning. Our climb has just started. So we don't know. A lot of lines are blurred as well, but that's where we go back and say, okay, if we have these items, are we slamming this for this reroll, or are we supposed to keep open for a 4 cost? And I think you're going to find that discovery process is truly the joy of TFT, because ultimately, if it's just like knowing the comp and executing it, that's a little bit linear for my own experience. And I think the enjoyment of TFT truly becomes when you can discover all these different play patterns and styles to open up with these knowledge gaps that start to develop.
Yeah, you put it better than I could.
Don't worry, that's why we're here, man. We complement each other really well. All right, last question from Timmy. Especially at the beginning of each new set, I practice in-houses with the best challengers in EU. I don't know why, but in late game, no matter how strong I think I am or how good the items on my carries are, I always get melted. Are there any tricks you have to better cap out a board? Well, first thing I would say, Timmy, is we actually did an episode about late game board caps. So definitely check out that episode from the previous set. But for this set, or even just kind of going back to this fundamental question, Dishsoap, do you have the same answer or anything different for set 12?
I mostly do have the same answer. Typically, for whoever is going to win in the late game, like if everyone has like the crazy upgraded 5 costs against upgraded 5 costs, like with good items and stuff, if like that stuff is actually equal, most of the time it actually isn't. Like most of the time you can beat people like having an advantage in that aspect. But if like the units and items are somewhat equal, it's really just going to come down to the strength of the augments. And maybe you have to like look at like if you're taking the right sort of combat augments at like stage 3 and stage 4 to actually like play for those like super strong capped out boards, is my first suggestion. The second one I would say specifically to the set is that they added like these like super powerful late game charms, and then a lot of the time, like if you don't have one of like the stronger ones in the late game, like say like Earthquake that'll stun the whole board, like an Elder Dragon or like one of the Zerath ones, for example, you're probably going to struggle against someone else who does one of those charms. So you definitely have to like make sure to save a little bit of your gold to like buy one of those powerful combat charms in the super late game.
Yeah, that's my tip for the set. Gold management matters a lot, and it is actually completely reasonable to just stay at level 9 and like use your 30 gold to roll for not just upgrades, but also a better charm. And there's situations where I give up chasing certain these pairs because like, is this actually going to make a big difference on my board to hit this unit versus potentially buy a charm? I think those are some things that you can think about. The last point that Dishsoap didn't bring up that he actually said before was positioning in late game fights can actually swing everything. If you're not paying attention, especially if you're playing like a melee carry, that almost makes the entire difference a lot of times. Being the right hex at the right time could end up being that X factor, that split second cast changes the entire outcome. So keep an eye out for that.
I feel like personally my positioning is a little subpar early on the set, so I just didn't even think about it. But
don't worry, that's why we're here in bootcamp to laugh it out, buddy.
True.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our first ever video episode. Thank you, Dishsoap. I know we're super busy, and we've been doing like 14 to 16 hours of TFT a day, so it's been a lot. But next thing coming up is we've got EWC. Yeah.
Yeah. Super excited. That's in like how many days? Like
it's in a few days.
Yeah, in a few days.
Yeah, and I'll be co-streaming it, so you guys can come check it out on my channel, but we'll definitely keep updating TFT Academy as we learn things. Right now, the tier list could even be different depending on this episode, even though we release it in the next day or so. Big shout out to everyone in support. We talked about our Patreon. If you want to check it out, we give a bunch of things like meta reads to our Gold subscribers, which is a newsletter that updates you on the patch in written formats to just give you a little bit of insight of what's happening on a live basis. You get access to a chat room with me and Dishsoap to talk about the meta, ask follow-up questions. You also get early access to practice tools. And we're also doing coaching draws where you can win an hour of Dishsoap time with the world champion, or settle for me, Frodan, to get a little bit of coaching as well. So that's going to be happening at TFTAcademy.com/Patreon. Okay. That does it for this episode of TFT Study Hall. I'm Frodan and Dishsoap. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.
Bye.